One fateful day, El Macho made an irrevocable mistake that would exact a heavy toll upon him, an error that would forever stain his legacy. This grievous misstep took the form of the brutal slaying of El Chapo's son, an act destined to seal his tragic fate. But before delving into the convoluted web surrounding this gruesome murder, we must first unravel the enigma that is El Macho. Born into a world of crime on August 17, 1971 in Sinaloa, Mexico, El Macho's life was steeped in darkness from its inception. He was the progeny of a notorious drug dealer named Rene, for whom illicit trade was not just a profession, but a way of life. This criminal underworld afforded a modicum of wealth and a few luxuries, but for Nzunza, it was destiny that awaited him. Tragedy struck Nzunza's life early on when his father met his demise, casting him into a despairing and destructive spiral from which he could never fully emerge. At the tender age of 19, he committed his maiden murder, coldly gunning down a man in front of horrified witnesses at a local party. Escaping the scene, he fled to the state of Sonora, leaving behind both authorities and former friends, but murder was just the initial chapter of his grim narrative. El Macho quickly became enmeshed in the sordid underbelly of organized crime, trafficking drugs and perpetrating unspeakable acts of violence with alarming alacrity. When one of his associates dared to steal from him, El Macho, in a fit of rage, embarked on a merciless vendetta, hunting down his target, Jesus, with a group of ruthless gunmen during a children's party. However, Jesus managed to elude capture, and El Macho's thirst for vengeance only intensified. It was during this time that he caught the attention of none other than Ismael Zambata Garcia, more famously known as El Mayo, a name that resonated ominously in the tumultuous world of drug trafficking. Zambata perceived potential in El Macho's unquenchable thirst for vengeance and blood. In a momentous meeting, the course of El Macho's life was forever altered as El Mayo presented him with an offer he couldn't resist, to join the ranks of the most formidable cartel in the nation, the Sinaloa cartel. In the shadows of Mexico's criminal underworld during the 1980s, a sinister force ascended to power. Miguel Angel Felix Gallardo, also known as El Padrino, wielded absolute control over the Guadalajara cartel, regulating the flow of drugs from Mexico to the United States. It was during this era that DEA agent Kiki Camarena met a gruesome end, kidnapped and brutally murdered. The Guadalajara cartel crumbled in the aftermath, giving rise to two dominant factions, the Tijuana cartel and the Sinaloa cartel. Contrary to popular belief, El Mayo, rather than El Chapo, was considered by many as the true mastermind behind the drug trafficking empire. The U.S. State Department reported that Zambata orchestrated an operation that smuggled cocaine from Colombia to Mexico through boats and possibly submarines. The cartel then utilized cars, trucks, and planes to transport these illicit substances to major U.S. cities, including but not limited to Arizona, California, Chicago, and New York. The Sinaloa cartel's dominance surged during the 1990s, bolstered by their astute ability to forge strategic alliances and execute cunning coordination tactics. El Mayo and El Chapo reigned over this vast criminal empire, maintaining a firm grasp on the intricate smuggling network that spanned numerous states and cities. The Sinaloa cartel, notorious for its brutality, was accused of heinous acts, including the murder of innocent women and children, sexual assault of rivals' family members, and the grotesque dissolution of victims' remains in vats of acid. In this ominous and perilous world, El Macho found his niche, thriving on the violence, retribution, and brutality that defined it. With El Macho's unparalleled ruthlessness, the Sinaloa cartel extended its dominion, distributing more narcotics than any other criminal organization globally. Despite numerous attempts to apprehend him, El Macho consistently eluded justice and retained his iron grip on power. One such incident occurred when two federal ministerial police patrol cars ventured into his territory to make an arrest. Swiftly, El Macho's gunmen arrived, compelling the officers to summon their commander. When the commander arrived, El Macho physically assaulted him, confiscated all their weapons, and declared his territory off-limits to any law enforcement presence. El Macho's notoriety only burgeoned after a deadly shootout in 2002, when federal preventive police intercepted a convoy of gunmen, including El Macho himself. The ensuing firefight claimed the lives of 4 police officers and one of El Macho's henchmen, but the drug lord managed to slip away from the scene. Even in 2005, when El Macho was finally apprehended along with his 8 men by the Mazatlan Municipal Police, and despite evidence of weapons in his possession, he orchestrated his escape from prison through bribes. For El Macho, such risks and dangers were part and parcel of his profession. He thrived atop the violent world of retribution and brutality. His loyal gang of cutthroats remained unwavering in their commitment to protecting their boss. With El Macho's expertise and ferocity, the Sinaloa cartel established dominance over vast territories and distributed more drugs than any other criminal organization on the planet. However, beneath the facade of invincibility, one tragic mistake lurked, waiting to shatter El Macho's throne and bring him to his knees. May 8, 2008, would be the day when darkness descended upon a shopping center parking lot and the merciless reckoning began. 3 young men gathered in that fateful parking lot, awaiting their friend. Among them was Edgar Guzman Lopez, the son of the infamous Joaquin El Chapo Guzman. Suddenly, a convoy of 5 vehicles screeched to a halt, disgorging over 20 heavily armed men wearing bulletproof vests. A deafening explosion marked the beginning of chaos as a bazooka shot set a sign on the mall's upper wall ablaze. Witnesses recounted at least 500 AK-47 shots fired, inducing widespread panic. After a prolonged hail of gunfire, the lives of the 3 young men were extinguished in an instant, leaving behind a scene of unspeakable carnage. To this day, conflicting accounts persist regarding the motive behind this gruesome massacre, with 2 versions of the story vying for credibility. Concurrently, a deadly power struggle and vendetta played out between the Sinaloa cartel and the Beltran Leyva cartel. The capture of Alfredo Beltran Leyva by the Mexican army in January 2008 had sent shockwaves through the criminal organization. Suspicion fell upon El Chapo as the one who had betrayed him, prompting the Beltran Leyva brothers, Arturo, Carlos, and Hector, to seek vengeance. El Chapo's son was brutally slain in this vendetta, but some reports suggest that the hitmen responsible were led by none other than El Macho Prieto. What could have driven El Macho to